Hello, and welcome to our presentation of a sustainability analysis between two companies, Cargill and Arla. Our team involves 4 members, all of which are project managers that analyze this assignment. First, we have Isha Gupta, Isaac Way, Gia Chef, and Ben Summers. First, we analyze the UN's SDG13 goal, that is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Some key metrics of this assessment are net reduction of carbon emissions, renewable energy, waste reduction, and clean water and sanitation. First, since we are presenting this analysis to an equity-minded investor, we thought it was important to analyze what exactly an equity-minded investor is. There are 2 key components that we looked at. First is making a positive change in society, and second is promoting the sustainability of environment, energy, and resources.
Now we will dive into the company overviews of both Arla and Cargill. First, looking at Arla. Arla is a Danish-Swedish multinational cooperative. It is the 4th largest global dairy company in the world. It is the largest manufacturer of dairy products in Scandinavia and the United Kingdom. It has a unique structure in the fact that it is owned by 12,700 farmers in 7 different countries. And most of its products that they produce are milk, cream, cheese, and yogurt. Now looking at Cargill. Cargill is a global provider of agricultural, financial, and industrial products. It is the largest privately held company in the United States. It has over 158 years of industry experience in the agricultural sector. Its network spans 70 countries in which it serves communities and consumers, and it sells in 125 different markets. Now, when we analyze both Arla and Cargill, we'll break it down into 6 different sectors: future goals, progress, emissions, sustainability, financials, and risks.
So taking a look at Cargill's future goals, in 2025, they hope to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions in their operations by 10%. In 2030, they're looking to reduce these emissions in their supply chain specifically by 30% per ton of products sold. And additionally, they're looking to incorporate regenerative agricultural practices on 10 million acres of their land. And finally, by 2050, they want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in their shipping to net zero. And comparing this to Arla's future goals, in 2025, they want to ensure 100% recyclable packaging and 100% renewable electricity in their production sites and their Europe offices specifically. 2030, they hope to remove fossil fuels based in packaging, cut their food waste by 50% compared to their 2011 level, and reduce emissions related to electricity and direct emissions by 63%. And by 2050, they hope to achieve net zero carbon emissions. Now, taking a look at Cargill's progress towards these goals, we can see that currently they have 880,000 acres of regenerative agriculture, and this is out of their goal of 10 million acres by 2030. And as for their goal to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 10% by 2025, they've actually already surpassed this goal by reducing emissions by 10.97% by the end of 2022. So it's likely that they will increase this goal to have a greater percentage reduction in the future. And for Arla, their goal was to reduce their electricity-related emissions by 63%, and currently we can see that they have reduced these emissions by 29%, so by 2030, they still have some percentage to decrease to achieve this goal. And their goal for ensuring 100% recyclable packaging, they're currently at 93%, so they have 2 more years to achieve their goal of 100% for this reduction.
Moving more into the comparison regarding the emissions initiatives across Cargill and Arla, Cargill specifically has a goal to reduce its CO2 emissions from its electricity and supply chain. And the way it's approaching this is by, it's recently completed a biodiesel plant that is designed to specifically provide the renewable fuel for its agricultural transportation. And what this plant ultimately does is it converts the liquid waste that Cargill, across all of its farms, across all of the countries that it's located in, produces, and really convert that into a biodiesel that can then be used to support the decarbonization of its entire supply chain. And this is something that really companies with enough financial capacity to initiate and invest in are only able to do, and Cargill has capitalized on that opportunity and taken really significant strides in that regard. Whereas Arla, on the other hand, it's focused into a niche CO2 emission reduction procedure, which is regarding its cow manure. And what this ultimately entails is having farmers across 50 farms in Denmark, Sweden, Germany combined really integrate a new form of feed additive called Bovaer, and this ultimately just works to suppress the enzyme that would then trigger any form of methane production in the cow's digestive system. And methane being one of the significant concerns across really all agricultural companies so far, Arla is one of the first ones to integrate such a new technology in terms of feed additives into how it's processing and how it's feeding its cows. In regards to sustainability efforts that Cargill has been taking, it really falls into three core initiatives. The first is its wind and solar sources for energy. It recently has declared 4 contracts regarding this initiative, and all of which are going to go operational in 2024, with the anticipated goal to decrease its CO2 emissions by 715,000 metric tons per year. And although this may not sound as significant when you compare it to the overall annual CO2 emissions released by Cargill, it is one that is very much plausible for a company like Cargill to achieve, and they are taking strides in doing so. Their goal is not as ambiguous as some of other competitors have claimed their goals to be, and this approach of making sure that the goals are both tangible and yet keep the company on its sustainability track is one that really stands out for Cargill's initiative. Secondly, we've got Cargill's implemented water stewardship program, which already, just given its few pilot programs across a few locations, has resulted in a total of 7% reduction of freshwater usage. And thinking the applicability of this structure across all of its locations, all states, all countries, this could really significantly introduce a new technology that can then be applied to so many other companies using their financing, using their company capabilities. But Cargill, being an industry leader, it has really initiated this water stewardship program, which is very unique to itself as it stands in the agricultural sector. And thirdly, we've got implementing regenerative agricultural practices. Now, this specifically is very consistent and common across a lot of the agricultural competitors that it has, including Arla, including another competitor called Vital Farms. And this really just entails helping the soil remain sustainable across a variety of years moving forward, while ensuring that the soil health is well maintained. And this involves reducing tillage, rotational grazing, and optimizing nutrient management. In regards to Arla's sustainability initiatives, it's focused again into 3 core facets of its efforts. The first, again, being water and solar power transformation of their entire supply chain, which it has a goal of achieving 20 to 85% of its site's electricity demand to be covered by solar power, which, although is very ambitious, it is something that they're working with in quite significant ways. They're making sure that their metrics are being measured internally. However, they're not really releasing any of this information to any third party or any other way that we can assess their ESG works and progress in this regard. However, their ambitiousness towards this goal speaks volume to how seriously Arla has been taking these sustainability initiatives, and this goal is certainly one of the most strongest ones across all of its competitors, which again stands to the efforts that it's willing to put out there. The second they have is installing waste sensors, and this is a consistent kind of sustainability problem that a lot of agricultural farms, companies have been facing, because it's hard to track down whether the liquid that is flowing through their drainage pipes is water or milk, which is a product that they can actually use and sell for generating greater revenue. And so the fact that Arla has been one of the first companies to now install waste sensors really in its production line speaks volume to the fact that it is willing to go the extra mile and implement, again, new technology and integrate them into the processes of their entire supply chain. And so lastly, in terms of Arla's sustainability initiatives, we've got its implementation of biogas fuel trucks to just ultimately increase the sustainability in all of their transportation methods. And this biogas comes directly from their cow manure, which has shown statistically to contribute to significant proportions of their methane contribution. However, the fact that they're able to kind of prolong this life cycle of methane speaks, again, volume to the fact that they're putting in effort in terms of recycling any form of fuel that they can. However, the one downside to this is the fact that that methane is still ultimately entering the atmosphere. It's just simply a prolonged life cycle for it. So it would be very interesting to see how Arla grows upon its current initiatives. However, it is really making strides and leading a lot of the other companies of a similar size and financial capabilities in the agricultural sector.
Now we will briefly touch upon the financials of both Cargill and Arla. First, looking at Cargill, they reported $165 billion in revenue, an increase from the previous year in 2022. They distributed $163 million to communities and funds to assist humanitarian aid and farmer livelihood. Arla reported 13.8 billion euros in revenue in 2022, also an increase from the previous year. And they've pledged to pay out 2.2 billion euros until the end of 2030 for farmers' sustainability activities. Now moving on to the risks associated with Cargill. It is often difficult to quantify the overall effect of sustainable initiatives for the company, since it is so large and operates in over 70 different countries. Cargill also leaves a very broad statement, which we did not like and attributed this as a risk. They credit their decrease in emissions to the increased efficiency and increased consumption of renewable energy. And lastly, Cargill prides himself on training farmers, but it's often hard to quantify the effects of training farmers on practices of sustainability. Moving on to the risks associated with Arla. Arla shifted from oil to natural gas as a result of the Ukraine war. This is not an emissions-free source of energy, but also that it could be attributed to a false indication of a decrease in emissions due to sustainability efforts. In reality, this is more so a result of the economic conditions and not sustainability efforts. The next risk that we have associated with Arla is that cow's methane production will decrease at a maximum of 30% due to the Bovaer feed. But this Bovaer feed is in the early stages of utilization, and therefore we need to study it more. Lastly, there are no goals concerning race or ethnicity for diversity and inclusion at Arla, and we attributed this as a risk as well.
For our final recommendation, we chose Cargill. There are 4 critical factors that we considered in this decision. First is reduction in CO2 emissions. Cargill operates at a much larger scale compared to Arla, and that is shown through their vastly higher revenue and involvement in the agriculture industry. Cargill's goal of a 10% reduction in absolute greenhouse gas emissions represents a larger amount of greenhouse gas emissions compared to Arla. Also, Cargill has met this goal 2 years early, and it is probable that they will adjust to a higher percentage for a future goal. Second, while both companies are striving for gender parity in management positions, Cargill has established internal groups that strive for inclusivity. For example, Cargill's Black Farmer Initiative considers the race aspect of inclusion, which is something that Arla did not outright consider. Third, financial capabilities. Arla is based in Europe, a region that is undergoing a period of great economical instability due to the war in Ukraine. This means that Cargill will be a safer investment because they operate in countries outside of the EU, mainly North America. And lastly, resource commitment. Cargill's massive goal of implementing 10 million acres of regenerative agriculture could be a large step for the agriculture industry and sustainability. Meanwhile, Arla is primarily considered with food waste, which is an issue, but currently does not have a goal on par with Cargill's land and resource program. Thank you for listening, and we hope you take this consideration when doing an equity-minded investment.